Death an end. Regardless of a person's particular belief system, however, the fact remains that death is the end of life, or at least life as we know it. Death, dying, and the afterlife are all shrouded in deep mystery, cloaked in darkness, and generally surrounded by fear and apprehension. The very idea of death strikes fear into many people's hearts, but it doesn't have to be this way. Human beings are totally powerless to prevent or overcome death. Our mightiest efforts to defend ourselves from the grave ultimately end in failure. Everyone dies. We can be thankful, however, that not everyone is as powerless over death as we are.
What is death? Regardless of race, religion, geographical area, or time period, every human has wondered about one fact of life that unifies us all. What is death? Indeed, death is a grand mystery. Throughout time, every major religion, philosophy, and spiritual train of thought has sought to explain this mystery. It is a subject that touches the life of every human and woman, uniting the entire human race under a cloud of inevitable mortality. The rich and the poor alike meet the same end. The black and the white both go to the grave. The powerful and the humble of leave this planet eventually.
Death. Death is the end of earthly life as a consequence of sin. Yet, it is a reality that no one can deny or ever escape. There are two types of death. First, physical death. Second, spiritual death. Physical death or death of the body is the separation of the body from the spiritual soul. When the soul, which imitates the body, departs, finally to be judged by God, the body dies. Second, spiritual death. Death or the death of the soul. It is the eternal separation of the soul from God and its creator. Bow.
The effects of death on people. The loss of someone close to us can quickly turn our wonderful world into an unfamiliar place. Coping with what used to be routine becomes exhausting. The simplest task may seem daunting. Grief affects us not only emotionally, but also physically and mentally. Mentally, a common feeling dealing with loss is the feeling of going crazy. The emotions are so strong and intense, those grieving often think they are the ones to feel that way or that their feelings are wrong.
Physically, when grief covers us with its dark wings, it's much like a serious illness. You'll be physically depleted and a variety of symptoms will follow. Here are some of the commonly reported symptoms: pain, sleeping difficulties, poor appetite or overeating, shakiness or trembling, disorientation, migraines or headaches, dizziness, dry mouth, crying, numbness, shortness of breath, exhaustion.
Emotionally, when you are grieving, your emotional life may be unpredictable and unstable. You may alternate between depression and euphoria, between winning rage and passive resignation.
Natural. For a death to be judged as being from natural causes, a body must be determined to have died from a natural process. This is the largest category of deaths, as most people really do die natural deaths, things like cancers, pneumonias, and heart attacks. Accidental. For a death to be judged as being accidental, the deceased must have been killed due to events that weren't foreseen, pre-planned, or intentioned. Things like car accidents, falls, and even pianos being dropped accidentally on a person's head.
Suicidal. For a death to be judged as being suicidal, the deceased must have been killed by their own hand or actions, where the intentions were specifically to deceased's one own life. Homicidal. For a death to be judged as being homicidal, the deceased must have been killed through the specific actions of another, where the intentions were to hurt, harm, or murder the deceased victim. Homicide is not necessarily murder. However, as homicide is an observation by a medical examiner and not a courtroom.
Life after death, heaven or hell. Heaven. For the believer in Jesus Christ, the Bible tells us that after death, believers' souls or spirit are taken to heaven because their sins are forgiven by having received Christ as Savior. Believers will ultimately be granted entrance into the new heavens and new earth. Hell. For those who do not receive Jesus Christ as Savior, death means everlasting punishment. Unbelievers will ultimately be sent to the lake of fire.